Just send, oh wait, you're not. There we go. All right, we are officially live streaming, and I will let everybody into the room now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our informational session on our recently released request for proposals for an integrated information management solution. I am Holly McPhail, the Special Projects Manager for the Children's Services Council of Leon County. And before we officially get started, I do want everyone to know that we are not only recording this session, but we are also live streaming onto our YouTube channel. And everything that is said during this session, whether it is audibly said or it is written down in the chat, is all a part of the public record for the Children's Services Council of Leon County. We invite you to kind of keep your phones or your headsets on mute. Feel free to come on camera if that's something that you choose to, but of course it is not required. And we'll go through an overview of our request for proposals and then talk about the question and answer period. But before I continue, I would like to take a moment to recognize our team members who are here with us today and invite our Executive Director, Ms. Sika Rose Green, to take the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Holly, so much. I'd also like to take a moment before I start just a few comments to introduce Jacinta Clay, who is our Administrative Services Manager, and to acknowledge Dina Snyder, who's our Director of Finance and Operations. She is out on leave this week. So thanks for joining us, those of you who are here on the Zoom and those of you who are viewing in live stream. We are very, very excited to finally issue the request for proposals for our integrated information management solution. If you have been reading up on Children's Services Councils and have looked at the governing statutes and ordinances, data integrity, accountability, being able to capture data, being very specific about the data that we capture, and doing that in a way that makes it easy for us to accumulate that, to collect it, as well as use it to tell the story of how the council is doing, and ultimately the story of how our county is doing, is all a part of not only our charge legally in the statutes and ordinances, but the reason why the voters in Leon County overwhelmingly approved forming this Children's Services Council, so that we can really start to see the needle move for outcomes that affect our children, youth, and families. We always like to start with why we're here and how we want to go about doing all of this. So you'll see that we have our priority areas there. These were decided by the council very shortly after it was formed. And so we have success in school and life, healthy children, youth, and families, and stable and nurturing families and community. And as required by statute, the Children's Services Council embarked on an exhaustive needs assessment that was completed in June of this year. And the priorities that have come out of that needs assessment, or an expansion of the priorities that have come out of that needs assessment, as well as some options for where our first funding for priority areas should be, is all listed there, and has led us to being able to formulate this seemingly full and long RFP, but it is because we wanted any respondents to have as much information as possible and be very clear about the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with this RFP. So we start everything at the Children's Services Council of Leon County with our theory of change. And those of you that have had to shift any organization from one place to another place, understand that your theory of change is the fundamental piece that informs what needs to be done, how you plan to do it, how you will assess whether it's being done properly, and ultimately what your goal is. And so this PowerPoint will be available after we finish the session. It'll be up on our website so you can delve into this further. But simply put, we are investing in our community through those priority areas and 8 domain areas under those, because we want to create an impact. And you will see there the 8 areas that we want to impact to move the needle for our children, youth, and families. And we will be able to assess that and know whether we're doing that through looking at these various key outcome areas and measurements, more importantly, that that research has told us that if we look at these things and if we're able to impact these things and show where these things have moved and improved, we should overarchingly see a big improvement in outcomes for our children, youth, and families. And ultimately, we are doing all of this so that all children and youth in Leon County are socially, emotionally, physically equipped to reach their full potential, or as I like to say, quoting Cornel West, to reach their full greatness as defined by them, as they see them being a contributing and wonderful part of this society. So this kind of helps frame the work that we will be doing, and hopefully helps frame these submissions that you all will send to us should you choose to respond to this RFP. And so with that, just want to thank you again for joining us, and I will turn it back over to Holly, who will go through the RFP and the attachments, and then we'll be available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much, Holly.
Thank you so much, Sika. I'm leaving this up on the screen intentionally for just a few more minutes, primarily because I want to call attention to this word data-driven up in our value statements. When the Children's Services Council began on this pathway, they adopted several value statements of how they want to approach the work that we do in our community. Ultimately, we're going to be issuing out community investments, also known as grants, although we're calling them community investments because that truly is what we're doing, right? We're investing in our community so that we can have this positive impact, but we want to be data-driven in every decision that we make. And I spend some time here because if we're going to be able to measure how do we reduce certain things or increase certain things, we have to have the ability to collect data from all of our community investment partners in all of these domains, not with just those that we're funding to kind of help us realize that ROI, but also helping us to look at our community and to do some of that kind of predictive analysis of where do we need to go. So you'll see references throughout the RFP that allude to community investments and understanding what performance measurement and where we go, but that truly is the catalyst for why we've issued this RFP. Ultimately, we are wanting to do four things. Develop a grant making and contract management system with a comprehensive solution for supporting programmatic functions, including performance measurement and reporting. And I say that because there's a lot of systems that are out there that do this. And when we started this process, we started kind of thinking, do we want a full kind of an enterprise resource planning tool that would help us do a little bit of everything? But truly, and we'll get to this in a moment, when we think about our history and how new we are, you heard Sika share that we were approved by the voters in November of 2020. We completed our needs assessment in just this past June. So this is kind of this next step. We don't really have a legacy system that we're trying to fix, but we are moving at a very fast pace because ultimately we were designed to issue these community investments and work with our partners. So all of these things that we talk about, we're wanting as much as possible software as a solution and anything that is kind of a commercial product that's off the shelf and ready to go without a lot of extensive customization. The other thing that you heard Sika mention is that there are well, there's 4 of us, and we will hopefully have one more team member here very, very soon. We are a lean, mean team, and what I mean by that is that we don't have a team of programmers or a team of customer success managers who are going to be with us. So we're really looking to have a partner as we grow this system, and so to have something that doesn't require extensive customization, that's going to be easy for each of our internal stakeholders to be able to update and manage and engage with, but also someone who's going to help us make our business functions more efficient. So with that, not only do we want that kind of standard grant making and contract management system, we wanted the ability to integrate with our current CSC Leon accounting software. We're using Bill.com and a combination of QuickBooks Online. We have Paychecks managing our HR and a couple of other functions that we had. But really, when we think about task flow management as it is developed into that grant making and contract management system, we want that kind of ability to work task flows so that it can integrate through some sort of API interface, ideally with the existing system that we're using for our accounting to manage our accounts payable and receivable. I want to be very clear that we're not looking for a new solution for finance and accounting. We're very happy with the one that we have, and our understanding is that Bill.com is very open, that they're developers of having that open API conversation with any other software developers that are out there. We've talked to our sister organizations around the state, and some of them have also been successful in doing that. The kind of third big thing that we want to be able to do is create an integrated CRM solution to enhance our community engagement efforts. Again, our team is small, and so for us to be able to effectively and efficiently track various different business functions is very key to something that we want to be successful with. And the last piece is more of a kind of a future look at working with our existing community partners to create kind of data lakes and data sharing agreements and processes so that we can better serve clients. So as you move through the RFP, you'll see questions that pose your ability to work with others. And if you've heard of any of our existing partners that are on the ground, there's information about them in the RFP so that you can kind of respond to the availability of potentially being able to work with them. I do want to go through the full procurement because it is 147 pages long, and I want to kind of describe each of the sections and what's included in that. Items 1 through 5 truly are kind of the RFP itself. It goes through the introduction, describing the solicitation process, which is a fairly standard, just kind of a straight up request for proposals. There is an opportunity for vendor presentations. It highlights the requirements for your response format and contents. It gives the scoring criteria of how we're going to be conducting the evaluation of all the responses. It highlights the award process, including the intent to award process, any protest processes, as well as our goal of hopefully having a contract start date of December 1. And again, I'll go over the timeline in just a moment. The next section is forms A through C. Form A is an attestation and disclosure. This is where you can register any trademark or IP that you might have that you want to disclose up front. It's also one of the forms that you'll be using actually in completing part of your response. It's a technical form, and I'll show you in just a moment where to access all of them in their current forms. As you go through the RFP, it'll actually tell you submit it in its current form, a Word document, an Excel document, that type of thing. Form B is actually the proposed changes form, and Form C is the technical requirements form that I'll show you in just a moment. Exhibit 1 is probably one of the chunkiest pieces, right, of the entire contract, because what we've done is included a draft contract so that you know going into this, so that we can hopefully meet our timelines, what our expectations are of an actual, the legalese, if you will. So we want you to have up front any and all of our legal language, so that as you're responding, and should you be selected, that you would know exactly the legal ramifications and requirements that our organization is requiring. Again, there are options for proposing changes not only to the statement of work, but also to that contract by using Form B. The last section is schedules A through G. And again, this is probably the other, might be 100 pages worth of the document. Schedule A being the most important, which is that statement of work, which we're going to dive into a little bit more here today. Schedule B is going to be the price sheet. And then schedules E through G are referenced throughout the contract and the statement of work as supplemental forms, including like a disaster recovery plan, a change process sheet, things like that, that you'll see kind of built in there. Again, our goal was to issue an RFP that had a draft contract almost in its entirety, so that we're able to meet the desired deadlines and timelines of our council members. So what is that timeline? I'm going to start there because that's usually the best place to start. Normally it's like, okay, full response due Friday, October 14th. But we are hosting this session. It will be posted not only on our website, but on our YouTube channel, along with the copy of this PowerPoint, so that anyone who might have missed today's session for the live stream can be able to go back and look and post more questions. Any formal questions must be received in writing, including any today that you might be thinking about. If you want to submit them in writing here as we're going through this session, we will accept those as part of and handle the part of the same way that we would should an email be sent with questions. And they will be incorporated in our questions response that will be posted by next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Again, as I said, the full response is due on Friday, October 14th by 1 p.m. It does require an actual mailed copy of your proposal, and the RFP does specify the tabs and everything that you should include in that. But we are also requesting that you include a flash drive with everything electronically, including those 3 extra forms that should be attached in their original format. The public opening of all of the responses will be at 3 p.m. that same day, Friday, October 14th, to which every respondent who submits something will receive a receipt and an invitation to participate in a vendor presentation. I'm going to talk more about that vendor presentation as we continue with today's presentation. After that vendor presentation, we'll move formally into our evaluation phase, where our solicitation committee will independently review all of the responses based on the scoring criteria that was published in the RFP, as well as that vendor presentation. They will come back together on Thursday, November 3rd. It will be a public meeting, so any of those of you who are located in Tallahassee are more than free to join us in public, but we'll also be live streaming it right onto our YouTube channel, just like we're doing here today. During that session, they will be shortlisting, evaluating the scores, looking at your price, looking at the pricing, and then they'll be making a recommendation of award to submit to the full council for approval. After that meeting is concluded, our procurement officer, that's me, will be sending out an email letting everyone know what our intent to award process looks like, what a protest process might look like, and that will be communicated to each and every respondent, or at least all of those who have been deemed responsive by Friday, November 4th at 9 a.m. At which time that kind of starts that protest process or the question process. And our full council will meet on Thursday, November 17th at 4 p.m. Again, it's a live public meeting that will also be live streamed to consider that recommendation of award. As stated, our intent is to implement the contract with a start date of Thursday, December 1st. So how we are evaluating responses, again, all of this is listed in the RFP, is really threefold. Experience, qualifications, and references, which would be under kind of your cover letter. So that's going to be tabs A and B. Technical capabilities, which is the worksheet, which I'll show you in just a moment. And then the last piece, which is really, I love to say this phrase, the meat and potatoes of everything, that's the statement of work. And the way that we've set up the statement of work is actually in a Word document that asks you to respond very specifically to each item in that format. This will help our team upon selection of an entity or an awarded contract to convert that quite easily into a contract. But it's also going to allow us to review responses in the best way possible. Again, we're doing all of this so that we're able to stay on our timeline so that we can eventually make these grant awards, these community investments with our partners. The vendor presentations are going to be woven into the scoring criteria, and they're going to hit really on 1, 2, and all of them 1, 2, and 3. Once you submit your response, when you receive that receipt, it's going to include instructions on what to include in that vendor presentation. I have teased that a little bit, and we'll go over that in just a few moments as well. Where I really want to pull your attention into so that you truly understand what we're wanting to develop is pages of the full RFP, pages 77 and 78. This is part of the statement of work. I think it's pages 4 and 5 in that Schedule A, where it's describing 3 very specific business modules. That's grant making, contract management, performance measurement and information management, and customer relationship management. So that's that CRM tool. When we think through each of those, what we're really wanting to kind of know, and we spell it out pretty specifically. So for grant making and contract management, and we've kind of layered it out almost like we want to have using this agile methodology of software deployment, really wanting to start there is we need to be able to design and publish competitive procurements and community funding announcements. And we need to be able to manage those applications so that those that are potentially bidding can kind of have a save as you go module or save as you go ability to do that. We also need to make sure that it includes flexible budget templates. I mentioned earlier task management and workflows. We want to have woven into that module decision support for application review and scoring by not only internal but external stakeholders. We also want this to weave into the ability to actually issue the contract, send it out for signature and execution. That's where that task flow management to bill.com is going to be important. Or it potentially even a third party like Signature. I think we're using Adobe Sign currently, but if you have a process for electronic signatures woven in, that's something that we're very interested in. The performance, and most importantly, it needs to be able to integrate, right, with the other modules that we have here. For the second business module, performance measurement and information management, this is really that robust tool to collect, organize, analyze, and display specific services and activities by our multiple stakeholders. So that's going to be our internal stakeholders, our external stakeholders. We're looking to be able to capture programmatic data like demographics, maybe attendance, things that we might call like process measures, more typical of your kind of contract deliverables, but also kind of performance indicators. We showed you that theory of change. We want to be able to track impact measurement tools. We also want the ability to build some intelligent processes to acquire third-party data sources that's publicly available, but to kind of integrate that into our display functions so that we're also able to make some comparisons. I think a great example is the Florida Department of Education regularly publishes things like school grades, but not just school grades, but it breaks down information about those schools. We want to be able to pull that into our performance measurement and information management module so that we're able to, as we move forward and look back on the investments we made, identify gaps in where we need to really focus in on our work. We also want the ability to analyze this data easily, right? So to be able to create some visualizations, our council is very interested in mapping. So we want to be able to see things by zip code, distribution of funding by type, and other types of filters. So being kind of very nimble in that space. And then finally, our third business module is the CRM. As with any CRM, just the ability to kind of store our contact and demographic details of all of our stakeholders. So we're looking at our community investment partners or our grantees, those who are making applications. We know that not everyone who makes an application will be funded, but we want to keep them engaged as we move forward. Our volunteers, members of the community with general interest, the media, our council members, funders, donors, all of those, and we want to be able to kind of have a task flow management integrated with that CRM so that as requests for technical assistance or help might come in, or if we host training, that we're able to track all of that. We also would like to be able to use this module to design and publish like event signups and community outreach campaigns. And of course, we still want that really, especially with the CRM, the ability to integrate it into those other modules. Now, all of these in and of themselves have existing solutions that are out there, but that integration piece is truly key. And this is primarily like I said before, kind of like the crux of what the statement of work will all be about. There are a couple of questions about that future planning piece that we're also incredibly interested in as well. But I do want to point to on pages 78 and 80, again, this is part of that, and this is going to be part of that, the contract schedule A. It really dives into what our current solutions are. So each of those modules that we described, some of our current partners, whether it's Healthy Start or our Early Learning Coalition of the Big Bend or our 211. We also have a relationship with our Leon County Sheriff's Office, and everyone's using different tools in different ways. Our eventual goal is that we will be hopefully creating a very secure data lake in partnership with all of these. Well, that's not part of this RFP. We need to know that whoever we choose is going to be open to being part of kind of that data information work group, if you will. And so we're thinking about that as we move on. So you'll also see that in your statement of work. So in terms of the actual response, I mentioned this, that we will require you to submit it as a binder as well as an electronic format. We do ask that you create these 6 tabs. So a cover letter, your respondent experience, qualifications, and references, including technical capabilities. So you'll need to have a kind of a cover sheet for that, and that's explained in the RFP. And then you're going to attach Form C. And then you'll do your statement of work, which is Schedule A, then a tab dedicated to pricing, which is Schedule B, and then any proposed changes should you have them, which is Form B. Now, one of the questions I anticipate is where do we put Form A, which is your attestation disclosures form? You would include that under tab B. I'm going to pause for just a moment because I just want to make sure that everyone knows where they're able to find each of these forms that I'm speaking about. So if you go to the CSC website, so it's cscleon.org right here, there's multiple ways of finding where all the information will be, but for your ease, funding opportunities is right there. It will stay here on the page, and it's going to bring you to our announcements page. Now you can flag this, bookmark this, whatever you need to do. You can also find it under news where it says funding announcements. It'll bring you right to this page. And you'll see here that this is where we publish all of our procurement applications for the CSC, whether it's this RFP, whether it's our community investment grants, whatever it might be, they're always going to be located on this page. If you click the open one, it's going to give you the information that's currently available related to this particular procurement. When this session concludes, you'll actually see a new little bullet that pops up underneath here that will give you a link to this PowerPoint, and this will turn into access the recording instead of access the Zoom. But currently, this is what it's at. You can download the full RFP by clicking here, and then it'll pull up with this ginormous, if I have to move this over, there we go, the actual procurement. But these are the pieces, Form C, Schedule A, and Schedule B that I discussed, that if you download each of them, it will give you its original format. We are asking you to please include them in its original format. This will help us in scoring. This will help us in creating that final contract and being able to help us compare the various prices that are being submitted from the responses. So this is where you're able to download them. If you experience any technical difficulties in downloading these, you can submit a request directly to procurement@cscleon.org. I'll pull that up on the screen in just a moment. So I mentioned vendor presentations. Once we receive a completed response, and any that are deemed and all that are deemed responsive will receive an invitation to sign up for a virtual presentation. The virtual presentations are described in detail in the RFP in terms of how long they'll be, the dates that they'll be, specifically October 18th through the 20th. So you'll get that invitation to sign up for that virtual presentation. And that invitation will include instructions for the presentation itself. Now, any response that's deemed non-responsive will not receive an invitation. And our legal team will handle those that are deemed non-responsive, and they will receive a reason why it was deemed non-responsive. Usually it means that they didn't submit everything, they didn't meet the minimum qualifications, things like that. The invitation itself will come from this address. That's me, hmcphail@cscleon.org. But again, all questions should be submitted through procurement@cscleon.org. And again, I'll put that up in just a moment. So examples of instructions for your vendor presentation so that you can kind of start thinking about them. Ultimately, we want to have some of our internal and external stakeholders, including our solicitation committee, be able to have a step-by-step user experience. This is really where we're looking for that UI, UX design, a visualization of how everything works together. So these are just some kind of examples of things that we'll probably ask for, just some visualizations of how the comprehensive solution functions, how it integrates with other things. And kind of an organizational chart of your personnel, including your key personnel. And in the RFP, we differentiate between your key personnel and just your personnel in general. We want to see all of it. And the most important piece, of course, would be walking us through the proposed milestone schedule. Now, we do have a draft milestone schedule included near the very end of that statement of work. So please look through that. This is the ideal situation. We've really spent a lot of time thinking through our business expectations and where we want to be and by when. And those sprints as defined, that middle column is really telling you the software solution that we want to see at the end of that particular sprint. So that is what we're envisioning. There's a section underneath that says, what's your proposed milestone structure? How might that fit in together? It could be that some of the things we've given too much time for, or maybe some of the items we've not given enough time for. So that's your place to really outline that proposed milestone schedule. Finally, I'll say that all questions must be submitted in writing no later than September 23rd. That's this Friday by 5 p.m. Again, we will accept written questions here in just a few moments that we'll be able to respond to. All of the questions will be published in an addendum that will be pasted again on our website. So that's here in this section. You'll see next Tuesday a list of all the questions submitted and the responses from our team. The full proposals themselves are due on Friday, October 14th by 1 p.m. They should be postmarked by then. The address is actually our law firm, and we have confirmed that they will be open and fully functional that whole day. There's no half days happening. So if there are courier services that are delivered, as long as they are received by 1 p.m., we should be fine. Or you should be fine. We will host a live stream public opening at 3 p.m. Again, that will be at our lawyers at the attorney's office here in Tallahassee. If you want to come in person, you are certainly invited to do so. However, there will be no members of our council there, but we still will publicly notice it and have that live stream of all the responses that are received. And with that, I just want to go over one piece of our RFP, the full thing, and just kind of as a reminder, there's just a couple of pieces that I wanted to mention, is that the purchasing official, all communication should go through the purchasing official, and no attempt should be made to reach out to any other of our staff members or any of our council members, or when our when we announce who our solicitation committee is, there should be no attempt to have any communication with them. If we do determine that that happened, it could disable your contract for it may disqualify your response. The other thing that I just wanted to show very quickly was proposed statement of work. I'm going to scroll down to get to it because it's not clicking for me. Here we go. So the proposed statement of work, I just wanted to give you kind of the visual. I promise it'll be there in just a second. That's the really long contract. And here we go. So this is the statement of work and all the pieces that are involved in the statement of work. So our purpose and goals, those business modules that we discussed, the current technology environment, and then basically section 2 is where you really start. So if we go here, you'll see that when you download the statement of work in a Word format, what we're asking you to do is actually type into the response box, complete it fully, that response box for each of the elements that we've provided in each of the questions. The other thing that I'd like to show you is the technical requirements for Form C. And hopefully that will pop up. All right, I go to new share. Here we go. So this is what Form C looks like when you are in when you're in Excel. So basically we want you to go through each of these line items and make one selection for the technical bits of what you're proposing. Is it an off-the-shelf solution? Does it require configuration? Does it require extensive customization, or is it currently not available? Please just select one for every single line item. If you skip a line and you don't complete it, we will fill it in as not available. In the RFP itself, it will tell you or will provide you more details about which it defines each of these selections for you. All right. And then finally, I come back here, hopefully. Okay, perfect. And then finally, the last piece that we wanted to show you was the pricing sheet. So again, that's going to be Schedule B. It too is in Excel. If you click on it, it should pop up. And then I have to come over here and do new share. Here we go. It will again pop up as an Excel spreadsheet, and we're just asking you to complete it. So we're asking you to group all of your pricing into line items under these parts. If at any point you need 10 line items under, say, initial licensing, for example, you can just easily just add in a new line when you're saving it. Just make sure that everything continues to save as you go and that you're grouping them under each of these sections. If at any point, I think that we even have kind of like a section for other, like if for whatever reason it's not coming out. Down at the bottom, we also have kind of the estimated fees for future services. So that could be integration services, ongoing improvements, things like that. This is where you can build in those kind of annual, those annual fees or estimated other personnel and support. Above that is the actual estimated annual fees for maintenance and hosting. And so each of those pieces. I'm realizing that I have noticed a typo, which I will correct and make sure that we make an addendum to what's posted online. This should say total for it should say total for annual fees for licensing, not maintenance and hosting. So that's the one correction we'll make, and we will make a note of that on our addendum. All right. With that, I'm going to stop sharing our screen and allow, if there are any questions that someone might want to submit via the chat function, you are invited to do so. I'm going to close all of my screens that I just opened up. Perfect. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I do just want to thank everyone again for joining us, whether you're watching the live stream or you've joined us here right here in our Zoom room. Again, if you have questions, definitely want you to feel free to respond. We did receive a question. Many governmental and quasi-governmental organizations we work with sort of frown upon plug-in flash drives from external sources. We're happy to do that per the requirement, but wouldn't it be easier to have vendors email the response? Because of the size of them, we actually have a cleaner. So what we were able to do is when we receive those flash drives, we put it through a process. And we will respond to this in our questions and answers as well. But we have an ability to kind of make sure that there's no malware installed on your flash drive, and we actually don't use any of our server systems. So we are requiring that you do send it in with your flash drive, please. In K, contract terms and conditions, it states, while failure to accept the contract terms will render a proposal non-responsive, CSC Leon will entertain proposed changes presented in accordance with this section 2K. Okay, so then it says, we've not reviewed the contract, but hypothetically, if we have issues with the language based on our experience, then we will therefore be non-responsive even after submitting Form B and will not be invited to present even if we meet all other criteria. No, if you use Form B, that does not deem you non-responsive. That is your opportunity to say these contract terms are not acceptable. There are specific language clauses or phrases that could deem you non-responsive. Those are outlined in the RFP, and when we publish the response to these questions, we will point specifically to that section of the language that we would deem unacceptable. You're welcome.
So Holly, we're at about 2:46. And just want to thank everyone again. More importantly, I think we also understand that you may not want to put your questions in the chat, and that's totally understandable. So just be aware of the email to which you need to send your questions so that you can get those answered, and understand that we will publish all questions and the answers to those questions as per our public records laws here in Florida. So totally get it. The email is there in the chat again, procurement@cscleon.org. And Holly, I'll turn it back over to you to close us out.
Well, she said everything I wanted to say, so we're good. Thank you everybody again for joining us, and that concludes today's session.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.